While it's almost certainly true that Donald had nothing to do with putting together Project 2025, since he's been back in office, he has followed the fascist playbook to the letter. Now, the question is this backfiring? This week, his FBI, and it is his FBI, launched a new tip line in order to target healthcare providers who have the audacity to help transgender youth. They posted on Twitter asking Americans to call in on any doctors or hospitals to provide what they called, quote, mutilation under the guise of gender affirming care, unquote. Now, by the way, in the Trump regime, when they say gender affirming care, they mean mutilation. So if this sounds dystopian, that's because it is. Instead of tips, what are people giving them instead? Well, thankfully, there's been a bit of an uprising. Thousands of prank calls, voicemails getting spam. According to Rolling Stone, LGBTQ plus activists, doctors, and everyday citizens jammed the line so this system couldn't even take voicemails anymore. The only people being harassed were FBI operators. Sorry, guys, not sorry. Trans people, for those of you who don't know, make up less than 1% of the population. They are far from being a threat to us. They're the most vulnerable population in this country, along with undocumented workers. But for Donald and the rest of the Republican Party, the trans community represents an opportunity for them. See, they need enemies who are the other. Why? They want to keep their base terrified of people they probably will never meet, who have nothing to do with their day-to-day lives, and by the way, represent a threat to absolutely nobody. It is the Trump regime that represents the threat to trans people in America. Because Donald wants trans Americans afraid. But thankfully, at least some people in this country are not backing away from this fight. They're getting louder and they're banding together. So the tip line is not an isolated incident. It's part of another pattern of failure. Because from high school track meets to federal courtrooms, trans Americans and those standing up with them and for them continue to win. So let's get into that. You would think that Donald has more important things to do, right? That he should be busy with actual governance. Okay, who am I kidding? He doesn't know anything about actual governance, and he's not interested. So how does he spend his time instead? Well, how about this? Waging a war on a 16-year-old girl. Why? Because he feels tough when he's beating up on those who have less power than he does and who are vulnerable. But here's the thing. Sometimes Donald picks the wrong target, and this time he lost. Last week, Donald demanded that California bar trans athlete A.B. Hernandez from competing in the high school track and field championships. His reasoning? Well, he's a bigot. There is no reason other than that. California changed its rules earlier this year because Donald put pressure on them. So shame on you, California. But AB still competed and she won. What did she win? Gold medals. That's plural. ABC News covered the event, which is in and of itself kind of awful because they would not otherwise have covered a high school track meet. And reporters talked to other runners participating in the event who agreed that the distraction was Donald and his hatred of trans people, not AB.
Last week, President Trump threatened to withhold federal funds from California unless AB was barred from competing. But instead of banning AB, the California Interscholastic Federation, which oversees school sporting events, opted to change the rules, expanding the number of athletes per event and handing out an extra medal in any event where AB won. Governor Gavin Newsom supported the rule change. As for the other winners,
It has nothing to do with me.
Some say the politics surrounding the event was a bigger distraction than AB's participation.
That she doesn't deserve any of the hate. And as an adult, you shouldn't be hating on a 16-year-old.
The Justice Department is investigating whether AB's win violates sex discrimination laws.
So AB channeled all of the hatred that Donald and the fascist Republican Party has been hurling at Americans like her. She took on every lie, every insult, every bit of the pressure. And she stood strong, ran fast, and turned it into gold. She told NBC LA that this year, everything was harder. How could it not be? She's being targeted because of who she is, something she cannot and should not have to change about herself. Her performances, however, got even stronger because that is what real athletes do. That is what winners do. They take the pressure and they turn it into stellar performance, something that Donald knows absolutely nothing about. AB's mother released a message to the Los Angeles Times that pretty much sums it up. Quote, watching you rise above months of being targeted, misunderstood, and judged not by peers, but by adults who should have known better, has left me in awe of your strength. Despite it all, you stayed focused. You kept training. You kept showing up. And now you're bringing home the gold. Unquote. That is a beautiful sentiment. And it completely summarizes everything that AB has been subjected to over the last year. But let's be honest, most trans kids do not get that level of support. And that is exactly what the Trump regime is counting on. They want to keep trans people isolated, silent, and afraid. And they want to keep trans allies isolated, silent, and afraid as well. But as AB reminded them, and all of us, being targeted doesn't have to make you weak. Sometimes it can make you strong. Something, again, Donald Trump knows absolutely nothing about. Before we go on, just a reminder that we here at Mary Trump Media are not corporate media. We don't bend the knee. We are not for sale now, and we never will be. We continue to expose the lies the Trump regime wants buried. And it's important for you to know that independent media survives because of you. So please like and share our videos. And if you believe in our mission, subscribe to our channel. So Donald always likes the easy way out. And he thought this was going to be an easy fight with a small marginalized group that he could win with his hands tied behind his back. But trans Americans and their allies are pushing back. In Texas, Nick Mulberg gave a blistering speech before lawmakers trying to push yet another anti-trans bill, asking lawmakers if they're tired of being on the wrong side of history. Watch this.
Because you're not actually interested in protecting women in Texas. That's the guise of the bill, right? It's the Trojan horse that you use for all this anti-trans nonsense. I remember for years as Republicans, gay marriage is going to end the world. And of course, then the public opinion shifted, the Overton window moved, and you had to pick a new scapegoat. That's what you always have to do. It's not that you can actually sit here and do the business of the people, make lives better for Texans like me. No. There's no time for that. We got to bully 1% of the population. We gotta harm them as badly as we possibly can. We gotta make them afraid. We gotta make them stay in their homes so that you're not forced to actually acknowledge that they exist. If we were sitting here like 50 years ago, maybe 60 years ago, instead of talking about trans women going into bathrooms, you'd be talking about black women going into white bathrooms. Do y'all ever get tired of being on the wrong side of history?
Yeah, perfectly said. Texas legislators and Republicans general do not care about protecting women or children. How do we know this? Just look what they're doing with reproductive rights in this country. They just want to hurt trans people. They need an issue. They need a wedge issue. They need a culture war because they have nothing else to offer their base. And the more they can keep them afraid and distracted, the more they can destroy the economy and destroy the infrastructure that makes life bearable in this country. Then in Michigan, where a Democratic legislator turned the tables, he asked a Republican lawmaker if he was trans, since he seems so obsessed with other people's gender. Take a look.
Representative, can you tell me, are you trans?
Are you?
I asked you the question.
All right, I'm asking the question back to you.
Right, but
I don't know that that's an
But what I
appropriate
want to know,
question.
yeah, but I'm actually going somewhere with this. I'm going somewhere with this because I want to know how does a 14-year-old girl prove whether or not she's trans to a 50-year-old coach?
Representative.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what do these 50-year-old men want as proof? Think about that for a second. By the same token, we could ask all of these people who are just so obsessed with gay rights in general if they're closeted homosexuals. Like, what is wrong with these people? That is how you fight back. If Republican legislators are okay with asking teenagers what their gender is and proving it, and again, we know what that means, you fucking perverts, they should feel comfortable asking the very same question. And if they're not, why aren't they? These lawmakers and citizens are done playing defense. They're done being polite while the GOP continues to wage war on their basic humanity. Because let's not kid ourselves. That is what Republicans are after. They want to deny the very existence of trans people in this country. This is not just about snark. This is not about grandstanding or making speeches. Some trans Americans are taking serious steps to protect themselves because they have to. I was just down in DC for World Pride, and the fear is palpable. So many trans Americans are starting to arm themselves. The LGBTQ plus gun rights group Pink Pistols says 20 plus new local chapters have been activated since the November election. And people like May Alejandra Rodriguez are being clear about why, saying, quote, trans people have every reason to be afraid because we're being attacked every single day. Another right is lost, unquote. Let that sink in and put yourself in that place. Trans Americans are turning to guns, not because they want violence, not because they even necessarily want to be carrying guns, but because they know that the federal government of the United States of America has put a target on their backs. And every day that target gets bigger. And they have created a permission structure in which other Americans who are so afraid of the other, who are so desperately afraid of giving people who are different from them the very same rights they take for granted, be allowed to commit violence against the most vulnerable population in this country. So while Donald continues to hope that the fear he is purposefully creating will silence people in the communities he wants to threaten, what's happening across the country is showing that his bullying and his threatening is having the opposite effect. Trans people, people in the broader LGBTQ plus community, and trans allies are not giving up. They're preparing for what comes next. It isn't just public backlash that's slowing down the Trump regime. The courts are finally stepping in too. This week, a federal judge blocked the Trump regime from cutting off gender-affirming care for trans inmates in federal prisons. Judge Royce Lamberth, a Reagan appointee, called Donald's executive order legally baseless and said that refusing care violated the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. Here is what the Trump regime tried to do. They ordered the Bureau of Prisons to stop all care that helps an inmate, quote, conform their appearance to the opposite sex, unquote. That meant canceling hormone therapy, mental health treatments, gender appropriate clothing, even access to razors for trans women. But the judge did not just block that plan. He called it out for what it is, a fabricated distinction built on ideology, not law. The judge wrote, quote, democracy is not as simple as the defendants make it sound. It does not mean blind submission to the whims of the most recent election victor, unquote. And that is a mistake so many Americans continue to make. We do not sell out wholesale our rights simply because the party in charge changed hands. We cannot sustain that if we want to remain a viable democracy. Rights are inviolable. Rights are enshrined in the Constitution. We ignore that at our peril. We give them up at our peril. So, in this fight against our fellow Americans in the trans community, how are we doing? Well, again, the Trump regime built a hotline specifically designed to target trans individuals, and trans allies spammed it into oblivion. Donald attacked a teenage girl, and instead of caving, instead of withdrawing from her meat, she won gold medals instead and made a very clear case against a man who is at least 5 times older than she is and should know better. Donald's allies continue to push hate, continue to push fear of the other, and they're getting dragged in clips that are going viral. His executive order denying gender affirming care to prisoners got struck down in court. They are not winning this fight. Let us not think for a moment that they are. But that does not mean that our trans siblings are still not under assault, because they are every day. So we can't back down either. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating, because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.